Welcome to Piano Inspires podcast, celebrating pianists, teachers, and innovators as they share their inspiring stories about the transformative power of music.
Are you ready to take your piano journey to the next level? Introducing the pianoinspires.com subscription, your gateway to inspiration, education, and community. With a pianoinspires.com subscription, you'll gain exclusive access to hundreds of teaching videos and webinars led by today's top piano educators and performers. Whether you're a teacher, student, new professional, or lifelong learner, you'll find resources designed to inspire and guide you every step of the way. Your subscription also includes access to Piano Magazine, featuring the most current and up-to-date information for pianists and piano teachers. Each issue delivers expert insights, interviews, new music and book reviews, and more to keep you connected to the ever-evolving world of piano teaching and performance. Visit pianoinspires.com/subscribe and use coupon code podcast15 to subscribe for less than $3 per month. Thanks for listening to the Piano Inspires podcast and enjoy the episode.
Welcome to this podcast. My name is Sara Ernst, and I'm the Director of Teacher Engagement with the Francis Clark Center. And I'm so delighted to be here today with Dr. Julie Jaffee Nagel.
Thank you.
So I'll start and give you a little bit of her background. So she is a psychologist, psychoanalyst, and musician who brings her unique combination of experience and education in music and mental health to a nuanced understanding of performance anxiety, as well as other diverse psychological problems. She's a graduate of the Juilliard School, University of Michigan, and the Michigan Psychoanalytic Institute, and has helped numerous people overcome blocks to creativity, performance anxiety, relationship issues, and self-esteem. She has 3 publications, 3 books, that have received wide acclaim, the most recent of which is Career Choices in Music. The others 2 include Melodies of the Mind and Managing Stage Fright.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a pleasure to welcome you here, Dr. Nagel.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, and please call me Julie.
Of course. Thank you,
Yes.
Julie. So start way back when you were a very young one who
Yeah.
first was interested in music. What was that journey
Sure.
like?
Well, I was 4 years old. My parents and I'm an only child. We were living in New York.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how or why this happened, but I was given a little white piano that had 24 keys, probably like a toy, they thought.
Mm-hmm.
And I started picking out melodies on it. I don't know how I did that either, but I loved that piano. I just
Mhm.
loved it. So that's my farthest back memory of
Mhm.
being at a piano. But that piano proved to be instrumental, no pun intended, to who I am now, frankly. When I was not long after that, and I don't remember, as children don't remember a lot of things about the early years. I don't remember, but my mother and I left New York because my father had left the family.
Mm.
And we moved to Virginia to live with her parents, my grandparents, which is where I grew up, Newport News, Virginia. And that piano went with us.
Mm.
And I loved it. And somewhere along the way, between being 4 and 6, they realized that I needed lessons. I could benefit from lessons. And my mother bought, or my grandfather, I don't know who, but I remember an upright piano being rolled down the sidewalk to the house where we
Rolled
lived.
down the sidewalk.
Yeah. I mean, you had to walk down like through a court to get
Mhm.
to where we lived. And I was so excited that that piano came into my house and I could play a bigger piano with a bigger sound and more keys. And I loved it. And then my mother started me with piano lessons.
Mhm.
And the rest I will probably cover because it was just a major turning point in my life to have a piano, and it's played a big part in my life, a piano at the time of family separation,
Mhm.
sadness, things that I didn't understand and were not explained to me, disappearance of my father who never reappeared,
Yeah.
although he was very famous and he was known by a lot of people. My father was an Olympic gold medalist 3 times in speed skating.
Wow.
That was before he ever met my mother, so it was before I was born, but he was known by a lot of people, but not by me. And so that piano took on, that little white one, and then the upright, took on a lot of meaning.
Yeah.
And,
I
and
can
we
imagine.
can talk about that as we go on. But yeah, that was the beginning.
That was the beginning.
That was the beginning of here I am today.
Yeah. So what do you remember about those early lessons and who was your teacher?
Well, she was a local piano
Mhm.
teacher. I don't know how she was chosen. I started at 6 years old. I remember going to her house for lessons, and I also remember a little dog she had that always appeared at lessons. And she always gave that dog, she drank coffee, and she would give it a little coffee and cream, and it would lap it up under the bed. So I loved going there. And she was good, but, and I really felt very close to her. I also, when I had my big piano, I was starting to compose little songs, and she wanted to record them. So we arranged a session, and what I understood as a 6-year-old about recording, and this was on the old tape recorders, reel to reel, that when you record it, it's there forever.
Yeah.
And so you can't make a mistake. And it has to be perfect. And I think that must have made me anxious. I will tell you that during playing one of my recording, my own compositions, I had a memory slip. My first memory of a memory slip. And I couldn't name the feelings then, but I felt scared. I felt embarrassed because I knew this would be on a tape forever.
Forever.
And you couldn't get rid of the mistakes. And I didn't want anybody to hear it. Now I know back, thinking back on after many years have passed, it was embarrassing. It was a feeling that people have with having an accident in public. And I was feeling humiliated because it was my own music. How can you forget your own music? But you can. Because when you have strong feelings, they can override any kind of rational thing that you're trying to tell yourself. And she did not stop the record. I called it a record. I remember whispering, stop the recording. And she didn't. Either she didn't hear me or she didn't listen to me. Both of which are interesting, both for music teachers and for psychologists and analysts, to listen to what people say, not what they think they should do, and just keep going, pay attention. So I was left with that memory imprinted in my mind. Later on, and this is now fast forward to the training I've had since in psychology and analysis, I understand that little girl. That was me. But the forever turned into a forever my father's disappearance, and wishing there could have been some kind of reconciliation, which children do, or wish, whether it's realistic or not. And that I was being forgotten, not just the music, which was the music, which was symbolically something I felt so deeply about and loved, and had been given the little white piano before we ever had this big event, the big traumatic event of my childhood. Childhood, as we'll maybe talk about later, it never goes away. It rears its head in adult forms, and it comes out on stage when you're out there and you're alone, or if you're playing a solo as part of an ensemble, or even just being in front of people. You don't want to forget. You don't want to mess up. You don't want to have memory slips, technical slips. Well, mine started young.
Yeah. So can I ask then? I mean, it's interesting to me to hear you talk about the desire to compose and create. And then on a certain level that your teacher honored that by saying, yes, let's do this and let's even record it. Is it something that you were able to continue through, or did the pressure of it kind of hamper your creativity?
I don't know if I composed anymore, but I certainly got more and more serious about the piano and playing the piano, and it meant a lot to me. It's a good question. But when I was about 11 and I stayed with this teacher, my mother sensed I was losing interest in the piano. And she contacted, we lived in Newport News, the College of William and Mary in Williamsburg had a good music department, and she contacted the dean there to see if he could recommend another piano teacher for me. In the meantime, now this is interesting too, Ruth Slanchinska
Yes.
played in my hometown, played a concert.
Mm-hmm.
And my mother asked her if she would listen to me play, because my mother knew I had some talent, but I was just really not sounding interested, involved in it. And she listened to me. And she said to my mother, and it's a little embarrassing to quote it, but it's so beautiful. She said, she needs a new teacher, and you don't treat an orchid like you treat a daisy.
Mm.
And so my mother contacted the music department at William and Mary. They recommended one of their professors. And I worked with him from around age 11 until 17 when I went to Juilliard.
Mm-hmm.
And the spark was rekindled. I wanted to be a concert pianist,
Wow.
nothing else.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to play with Leonard Bernstein, who became my musical father. And I never met him. We sang with him when we were at Juilliard. We had to be in the chorus, and they did the Beethoven Ninth, and Bernstein was
Wow.
conducting. And so I'm fast forwarding there. But he was a big influence in my life. But anyway, I worked with this teacher from William and Mary,
Mm-hmm.
and then nothing could keep me from going to New York. And I look back on that now. I was accepted. I had to audition.
For Juilliard.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, you have to go there and audition in person. And I was, there's so much personal, as you're seeing with me, but this is with the people I see. There is a personal life beneath and involved and mixed in with all the talent they have. And it goes along with you when you go on stage. So I was a very shy and scared little girl. I was scared to go away from home. I know I'm saying this so people can hear it, but I was scared to go to summer camp.
Mm.
I practiced the piano. I had friends. I did things in school, but leaving home was hard for me until I went to Juilliard. The music pulled me there. I wanted to go there. The teacher I was working with at that time he wasn't a graduate of Juilliard, but he had been in one of their programs and knew it and was recommending me to go. And nothing would stop me. I went, and I did it, and that was a big, big move
So,
for this little
yeah,
girl.
no, I can
It
imagine.
was.
So what did you have kind of through your training with this professor in your local community? Did you have performance outlet? Were you playing and playing publicly?
I would play for different
Mm-hmm.
organizations.
Mm-hmm.
I played in school assemblies.
Mm-hmm.
I started to feel nervous about doing that, though. I would do it, but I would also kind of dread rainy days when we couldn't go outside to play because we'd have to sit in the auditorium and watch some movie of some kind, or would Julie play something for us? And I didn't like to be put on the spot like that. So I experienced stage fright with that too. I mean, stage fright is a mixed bag because you really want to play and you really want to perform and you love the applause and you love feeling you've done something well. And then there's this other pull, which comes from, I call it the skeletons in our mental closet that say, yeah, but you're anxious and you're not comfortable playing. There's something about playing that's not comfortable, and the mind starts battling inside of your head. And I didn't really like to play in public that much, but I did, but I didn't, but I did. And I love to play the piano, and to this day, I love to be around musicians. I love to interact with them. I love to interact with analysts, with psychologists. I love to know why. And a big question in my mind still is why. And I've done a lot of psychological work on that why. Why did this happen to me? And but Juilliard opened my eyes to a world that I would never have had otherwise, although after graduating from my master's degree and graduating, I really didn't know what I was going to do with it. That's another piece of the story, but I went through Juilliard. I did really well. I think better than I gave myself credit for.
So you were able to kind of handle the intensity of that?
I did.
Because I would imagine like the performance intensity is quite high.
incredibly high.
Yeah.
I can't think of any. I look back on it and I think, was that me that did that and discovered New York? There were no dormitories when I went to Juilliard. You had to find an apartment. You had to just grow up.
Yeah.
And I met interesting people. I had a wonderful piano teacher at Juilliard the whole time. He kind of became a father surrogate to me. And he was a wonderful teacher. Joseph Rayev was his name. And he seemed to understand and give me repertoire. But no, I did perform. You do perform when you're there. Yeah.
I would imagine there's a certain momentum that one would get in terms of, you had moved there and you had to find all this housing, and then you're enrolled in the school, and then you get the lessons, and then you're in this environment.
New York City.
Yeah.
You know?
Invigorating.
Yeah. I kind of felt grown up too.
Oh, absolutely.
Doing it, but I don't know what. I think I even wonder how my mother let me go, because that must have been hard for her, because I was around and she heard me playing, and my grandparents and parents are proud, and then I had felt secure there. New York, it was all new, big, different, meeting people, but I really loved it. I really loved the stimulation, the environment. Louis and I started dating. But we had a whole circle of friends, and we would go to Carnegie Hall any number of times. Philharmonic Hall was just built as we were kind of leaving, but we would go there. We would go to friends' recitals. We would give some recitals. We were just immersed in music and meeting people who also could talk the language.
But you knew when you were finished that, well, I guess you didn't know when you were finished what exactly was next.
I didn't know.
Yeah. Did you know that it wasn't going for a performing career?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. And also the year that Louis and I got our master's degree, the same year we graduated together. He went on for his doctorate. But we were living there for a couple of years before he got the job at Michigan. And I taught piano. But what we did do, we did start playing two piano and four-hand, and we did that in concert. And we did that. I would get nervous, but I loved doing, especially two piano, because I felt like I had my own instrument. There's nothing really as powerful as having this big instrument in front of you, and you are playing it and controlling it to the best you can. And yet you're with somebody else. I wasn't alone on stage, and we had this interaction. But I knew there was something in me that I wanted more. And how did this start? Oh, the stage fright. I mean, I was always interested in stage fright. Why? It was not talked about. It was not taught about. Excuse me. There were no conferences about it. I would complain to my teacher and say, I'm really nervous about playing. And he'd say, I'm not worried about you. You're going to be fine. And he really believed that. But what I know now is reassurance. And the reassurance that your teacher thinks you're going to be fine makes you feel, oh my goodness, I can't let him down either. Will he leave me? I really got through it better than one would think, given my background. Maybe I'm digressing a bit here, but we had some tapes of our two piano concerts that were made live in performance. And I wouldn't listen to them until about 3 years ago, because I didn't think they were good enough. And I was so surprised how good they were that I underestimated myself, which is something I work with my patients about, there's no such thing as perfection. It often leads to injury because you're going to practice harder and practice incorrectly. But to appreciate who you are both on and off stage, because I tell you all my history, but everyone takes their history when they go out there, and they're alone, unless you're in an ensemble. And still, people who play in ensembles get nervous, especially if they have 4 measures of solo and they flub it or something. So I'm losing a little track because this story is long, and I've been living it for so long. But I didn't give myself the credit for how good I was, but chose. And I remember thinking when I chose to go back to school to train in psychology and in social work, that that I wanted to show myself I wasn't going back and doing that because I couldn't play the piano. So we played a series, actually, of concerts because I wanted to see if I could do it. And I'm leaving officially, not really, music is in my blood, but that I'm not leaving it because I can't do it, but because I'm choosing to do it. I'm choosing to do something else. And the stage fright had really interested me. Why does this happen? Why don't people talk about it? What goes on that causes it? And I knew I was going to take the music with me, but I was comfortable going into the more academic. And then after I finished the psychology, social work, dual PhD, I still wanted more. I loved that work. I love probing. I love understanding how people think and feel and helping them if they get off track. And I then went into analytic training, which is a really in-depth about deeper things in the mind that conflicted and come up, and it needs more than certain behavioral things. I was trained as a behaviorist in the very beginning, and I knew there was more to it than just do this or do that, because I like to work with people to give them agency for themselves, not me telling them what to do and they think they have to please me. That's like pleasing an audience. And in fact, it's a really good way of doing therapy, because when the patient will, I don't like to call them patients, the person will be thinking of me as an audience or a mother or a father. I can be anything to them. And it helps me understand what they are feeling at the time and trying to please. And so we can really get into this stuff about pleasing or being angry or doing what someone tells you to do, rather than helping them learn what's right for you and how did you get to this place and think you're not right. And to also accept, this is hard, but it's important, to accept that we all have limits and it's okay. And it doesn't make you a terrible person or a terrible musician. And that's the kind of work that I really love to do, and I love to do it with creative people. But I see all kinds of, it's not, stage fright is not just the ownership of musicians. But there are a lot of common threads that go through. One is the musician is different, I see, in two major ways. That the early age you start, you don't know you're going to be in music professionally, but you can't be in music professionally unless you start young. The other one is at the end of your training. I just talked about this yesterday at Pedagogy Saturday, about the income and the job market, and especially it's really, really hard, and there are more trained musicians than there are jobs, but people are getting creative, and that's good. But we also have Zoom and other platforms now that may reduce ticket sales, and it's really hard to. It always was, but that distinguishes musicians, say, from other people who have a lot of
who
training,
suffer from stage fright,
or other non-musicians who have advanced training, but graduate to jobs that pay way more than a musician may ever get. It's a passion of mine to try and work with musicians to help them lobby for themselves and advocate for their profession, because it's presenting organizations worry about ticket sales, but they don't get ticket sales if they don't get musicians. But musicians can't just play for free and that they get ticket sales. Musicians need to have, talked about this yesterday, the money means self-worth. It's not just money is the currency, but how you feel about yourself, that you can ask for a fee and an appropriate fee, rather than have to gig around and put it together, go into debt. The market is really, really hard. It always has been. but people with far less training earn far higher salaries. And the musician we need to do, I think, in my experience and my understanding, is schools need to bring this in. Money is a topic that's hard to talk about.
It is very hard.
It's very hard. One of the hardest. And to understand why is it so hard to talk about your self-worth, your value, not just in dollars and cents, but your value as a person and as a musician, to get people to be able to negotiate like other people I see who have really high paying jobs, and they negotiate to get pretty good salaries. And so anyway.
So if we take your kind of journey back to when you first had this desire to study psychology, and you said sociology as well.
Social work.
Social work. So,
yeah.
Did that come from kind of your own journey with stage fright? Was that kind of a drawing force there, like something that you really wanted to discover?
I think partly. I think partly. A lot of this happened to me organically. I've reconstructed it, and because at the time I don't think I really realized what I was doing. I was teaching piano privately in Ann Arbor for a number of years. And I also got certified after Juilliard to teach in public school. I taught public school general music for 3 years. And I loved it, but I loved working with the person who was making the music, and I wanted to understand more and more about what made them tick. And one time, Louis and I were doing a two-piano concert up in Traverse City, and we got snowed in and the concert was canceled. And I was sitting around reading just stuff. We were staying with a friend that was around the house. And I read about a professor at U of M who was doing work in test anxiety. And I was interested in the musician. But when we got back to Ann Arbor, I called him and I said, do you know anything about music performance anxiety? I mentioned I'd read that article. And he said, no. Because I said, well, I think there's similarities. And we talked, and he said, would you like to work in my lab? And I was getting the bee in my bonnet to do something else than teach piano or elementary music. But I love that too. But so I said, sure, And he trained me. But he was a behavioral psychologist. I didn't know one from the other. Believe me, I was very naive about all of this. But I loved what I was doing. He put me in with testing one of the subjects in one of his research projects, where we did biofeedback and desensitization and cognitive coping and relaxation. All good. But the subject I had, and biofeedback, we had to hook up her hand. I'd hook to see if her hands got warmer, which meant she was relaxing. Her hands got colder. And I thought, do I stop this? I'm going to ruin this protocol if I stop it. I'll just say her hands got colder. I stopped it. And I said to this woman, your hands are getting colder, and you're supposed to. Who says you're supposed to? You're supposed to have warmer hands. And she looked at me and she said, oh, I forgot one thing. We were giving the imagery. We were told everybody got the same imagery of you're lying on a beach and it's warm and there are waves and the sun is shining and it's a perfect day and she's getting colder. She looked at me and she said, I hate beaches. That was a turning point. You can't tell people what they should think. You have to draw out by understanding, and if you don't understand, to try and understand and to find out, and that started really pushing me. There's more. And that's when I wanted to go for a doctorate and do psychology. And even in psychology, the way it's taught is less and more now. They're more behavioral now than when I was coming up in it. But still not enough. Even though I did my prelims and my dissertation, I had to do 2 prelims because I got this dual one. But one I did on the something about how it was about social. It was a social. What was it? The occupational choice in music. I think that was the social one. And the psychology one was on the personality of the musician who chose this kind of occupational choice. I mean, this happened very organically, not pre-planned. And by then I had started to meet some people who were doing psychoanalysis, which went, but why are you choosing this? Not just that you're doing it. And that appealed to me a lot, because from 4 years old, I guess I was wondering, why did you leave and why didn't you, all of this. And so I applied and did all, it was 8 more years of postdoctoral work to become an analyst. And it just felt like that fit me. And then I started applying music to the psychoanalytic concepts and theories. There's a lot of overlap. Yesterday, in Pedagogy Saturday, I was talking about money, but I really wanted to work my way, and I did, into this thing about your own value, not just a monetary value, even though that's important. And so I started out by just saying, you're all musicians. I bet you know, if I say the name of the note, F sharp and G flat, I bet you know what that's about. And they did. And I led that into, in mental life, things can be two things. And as we talk about money, we're going to talk about real dollars, and how now the income for the musician is way down. The census data and the National Endowment for the Arts data, it's really low about musician employment, lower than usually low. But it's about your value as a person doing something that we want to get high. And they understood that you could talk about money as real dollars and cents, and you could talk about it as your value. And I found that I really love bringing these two things together. And I know I'm talking a lot, and you can cut whatever you need to from this, but all of this just happened organically. It wasn't pre-planned. If you had asked me what was a psychoanalyst when I enrolled in Juilliard, I would have said, what's that? I didn't know. But the first time I was writing. I like to write. I like to express myself in writing. And the books came out of all of this eventually, and a lot of papers, a lot of publications and papers. But I was at a party, and a very famous analyst was there because he was giving a guest lecture in my institute where I was being trained. And we just so happened, and he is a marvelous writer. I'll mention his name here. I don't think he would mind. Salman Akhtar. There are a lot of people who have been influential in my life, but he was. And we were just standing at a table, like at a party, where you stand and you next to somebody, and we were, I think, at the Carrots or something, waiting to. And so I said, Salman, are you writing anything now? Of course, realizing he probably was writing 10 things right there. You see, he was writing a book on how Freud treated animals in the Wolf Man, the Rat Man, Little Hans, who had a horse phobia. And I just said, to make conversation, oh, are you doing anything about musicians and animals? He said, oh, no, I never thought of that. And then he said to me really quick, would you write a chapter? He didn't know me. Wow. And like really quick, I said, yeah. And then I thought, what? He said, okay. Think of something, write it, and send it in. And I thought, what in the world? I've never done anything combining music and analysis. And I thought about it a while, and what popped into my mind, it's the first combination piece I wrote. I've written a lot now. And that was Melodies of the Mind, is combining how music expresses emotion. And what is it in the music? Not the composer, a lot of people involved, but I wanted to know what is in the music. And I decided all of a sudden to write on Peter and the Wolf. I had an animal, I had music, I had instruments that, the bird, the duck, they were all, as I started to understand it, part of Peter's psyche. As Peter was leaving home and leaving his grandfather's house, speak of leaving grandfather's house to go, leaving home. I didn't even quite realize that at the time, but it had that it had that story about leaving home and how the instruments were more than just instruments. They were part of his internal life.
Mm-hmm.
And that his growing up and capturing, not killing, his aggression, he wanted to get that wolf out of the way, but he didn't kill it. But he captured it and he took it to the zoo alive. Of course, the duck was inside, but
Mm-hmm.
Prokofiev leaves that
Mhm.
score unresolved. What happened to the duck? But he didn't kill it. And the music itself starts off with a very simple lilting melody of Peter and the Wolf.
Mm-hmm.
Few instruments, they're different versions of it, but it's a thinner sound. Peter's a little young boy, adolescent. I don't know what age you can make him. In your mind, whatever you want.
Mhm.
Music does this to you.
Mm-hmm.
And when he caught that wolf and they were all parading to the zoo and the hunters were coming and Peter was leading it because he had captured the wolf, it's the full orchestra.
Mm-hmm.
You see the evolution of this music, of this boy, of his mind, of his fears. The bird and the duck, they ran back to the pond, up the tree. And yet Peter captured the wolf, tamed his aggression, didn't kill it, ate it. I don't need to eat it. He swallowed it whole, I think. I love doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And
So that chapter was about
Peter and the
Peter
wolf.
and the wolf.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't realize that was about me also.
Mm-hmm.
And long after that, I realized about the leaving home and that the analyst that I worked with while I was in training, wonderful, wonderful person. His first name was Peter. Now tell me there's not an unconscious when all of this is going on.
Yeah.
It was just fascinating, and I'd been writing ever since. On West Side Story, I was invited to write on Lucia di Lammermoor, the opera. And I look at the music, so each chapter, except the first one, this is probably more than you intended, that I intended to say, but I've talked about this before. The first chapter, I talk about Freud's dislike of music. He disdained it. He said, I don't understand it. I don't like it. But he was working on a verbal theory. But there was another, and I can't remember the name, a German philosopher who was working on the importance of music in mental life because it was aural, A-U-R-A-L, instead of O-R-A-L. And that it could be pre-verbal, or that it certainly could be expressed, as I believe is true, between infants, the earliest ages, and their parents, in the sounds they make. That's music. That's the first music of the child. And they're responded to, hopefully, in good parenting. They don't know, the diaper or the feeding or whatever, but there is that audience response that I believe becomes imprinted, whether someone becomes a musician or not. But for a musician, throughout development, this audience response is really important. And people don't want to let down the audience, i.e. parents. There are lots of fantasies about that. Did my parents divorce because I did something wrong? No. But children think very concretely until they get to be able to, expand on the symbolic meanings of what they're thinking. I'm getting a little bit lost here in where I'm going, but the idea of how does music express it? How does the tritone in West Side Story that starts the piece and ends the piece, the last sound you heard, the first sound you heard, and it's all the way through to show the tension of this lack of resolution while they're trying to resolve, and it never does. I mean, Tony dies on a tritone. And or Lucia di Lammermoor was invited to present that in New Orleans after the Hurricane Katrina destroyed the opera, didn't destroy it, but really damaged the opera house, and it was rebuilt, and they were going to have that as their opening opera. And some people that I knew there in the Institute, I didn't know they asked me to speak there on that opera. It's pretty gory because she kills her husband on their wedding night. But she was a demeaned woman. She had, but she had the lover she wanted to marry, and her father said, no, you have to marry this other guy. And there's a love song in the first act that's just beautiful. And when she's coming down the steps after murdering her husband that she just married, and everybody is celebrating, and she loses the words. There are no words to her mad scene, the famous mad scene. And she sings on ah, 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 but she sings the love song. She's delirious. She's singing. She's remembering the man she wanted to marry. I look at those kinds of things in the music. And one other example I'll give you, there are many, but one I love because I wrote a two-person conversation between Freud and Mozart because Freud did not like music. A little bit he liked, but he said he watched an opera. I thought, why don't you listen to an opera?
Yeah.
I used their words as best I could, and then I added my own too. And Mozart says, I can't dance because I'm not a dancer. I can't, I don't know, things he couldn't do. He said, but I can write and sound because I am a musician. Yeah. So my dialogue is they returned from eternity. They met each other. I had this done at Steinway Hall, actually. This has been done with student actors. Louis played, not Mozart, I had the actors, but he played the music. And they started trying to convince each other of their point of view to come around a little bit more. They got to be kind of, I don't want to say friendly, but curious about each other. And Mozart started to use a little bit of analytic thinking, and Freud started to use a little bit of Mozart, but then Freud started to analyze Mozart. And then they got into current events too, that, why do we have to have, red states and blue states? Why can't we cooperate? And then Louis and I did a four-hand Mozart, a movement of one of the Mozart four-hand sonatas. And they were talking, and then Mozart says, I think I hear music, because I just snuck in and we were, and then he said, that's my music. And then he looked and he said, there's Julie Nagel playing the piano with Louis Nagel. And Freud got curious and they walked over to the piano, and Freud starts to analyze and say, oh, maybe Julie had some problems too that she's trying to work out through music. And Mozart yells at him and says, Sigmund, just be quiet and listen to the music. Anyway, so we played that. And then we were at the end of the play by then. It didn't tell you the whole thing, but they had to leave. And instead of Freud looking at his watch and saying, we have to stop now, Mozart took out he had a watch and was the one who said, we have to stop now. And that was the end of the play. And they went back to eternity, and maybe they'll be back one day and we'll have a sequel to that. But I did that because I like to reach out to the public, not just my colleagues. Yeah. I think in talking about money, we have to get that message out too. We have to join boards. We have to put it in education. We have to be, get to know people who could sponsor artists. But we have to let them know what we do. And I say me, I'm an artist too. I mean, I think the musician, I would love to spend this section of my life continuing writing. I still see people, not as many because I'm doing all these other things, but to educate the public about the value of music in society.
Do you have a sense of why? Because you mentioned that the musicians are the financial worth of the musician is low. Do you have a sense of why? Like, what's your assessment of what has brought us to this point?
I'm not sure why, but it's been almost forever. I mean, through history, musicians were not. Some were able to get court appointments. And there's some who have won. It used to be when we were at Juilliard, you won a big competition and you had management. I don't know how some of the big names got out there, but I'm talking about the majority of those of us who graduate. And what do I do? What do I do next? I have to have 3 jobs. I don't know why. I don't think, I mean, that's a good question to research. I don't think people really understand because they don't know what goes on backstage.
Mm-hmm.
It'd be great to take somebody into a practice session, into a
Mhm.
rehearsal, to have students talk to audiences wherever they can play, for music teachers to take their students or to give talks, but to have students demonstrate or to talk about what goes on in training a musician. You
Yeah.
can't start at 18, 19 when you're in college. If
Yeah.
you're going to be a professional musician, you can start to be a lawyer then. You may have even liked law. You may have had a lawyer in a family or something, or a doctor, but you don't really start that training at a young age. And I think that's something that the public doesn't quite realize. They hear this beautiful effect. It looks easy when it's done
Yeah.
well.
Yeah, and
They
it's
don't realize that often musicians don't have even the employment security to buy health insurance.
Yeah.
So if they get sick, they don't have that. I just really think education,
Mhm.
and I think music teachers can lead the way, and I think it's the optimism from whatever I'm saying here about the pessimism. I think it's the optimism of the music profession that we can take what we do but get attention
Mhm.
from public resources, individuals, corporations, get music any and everywhere, and let people know that if you want ticket sales, you got to get artists to come and get these for you. That's another part of the equation. And we have to train our students to not be afraid to bring in people from the outside. And to learn how people, I have patients, oh man, I learn a lot about negotiating salaries from a lot of the patients that I see who do it routinely. To do something in education as important as learning to play their pieces. And to use your music, I mean, for one thing, if they get anxious, that's the anxiety thing. I'm getting away from that. But it's not, because if you don't value yourself, you're not going to request. You'll take, oh, we'd love to have you, but we just have a low budget and we really can't afford you. That there'll be a way to teach them business skills, negotiating, without having to go to the business school to get another
Right.
degree, but to
Yeah.
have the more realistic. I don't think people are aware of how musicians really rank so low on census data in terms of employment.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's not an awareness I have
It
in a
is
concrete
lower
way.
than unskilled workers very often. And
So if I draw that back, because one thing you were talking about earlier that came into my mind again is, you know, the how musicians are trained very young, and how as musicians we bring our I don't know how you phrased it, but our sense of child self with us on the
everything,
stage.
yeah, everything. You're really exposed. I mean, they're right. You're
Yeah.
exposed, and you're alone. Yeah.
I wonder if you could express that in even with an example, or with a more just description on what exactly that means for the musician when we go on stage and we're bringing our, you know, self as a child with us.
Well, that's a good question, and it's complicated, because if there's a sense of self that we all don't want exposed. There's a sense of self that we feel insecure about. And when you go on stage, you're in front of a lot of people, or a jury, or a jury, or a teacher. But other people are felt to be judging you, and sometimes they are. Often they are. And unless a person has a good sense of self-esteem, that mistakes don't make you a terrible person. It's individual what people what they worry about, but it's also unconscious. One of the books that I've used in the past in my own thinking is that since becoming a musician starts so young, even though you don't know it, and is so involved with parents, when you go out on stage, they're not there, so you have to have a parental model inside your mind, and not to think, but it's a balancing act, because you do have everybody in the audience is a parent also to you, but you're worried about letting them down. Well, what's that about? Why are you afraid of letting them down? What do you fear? What happened? Things like that. And to talk to people, to work with people, to not be afraid to recommend them to therapy, or to have some kind of really more intensive counseling than I know in schools you can't do therapy with people. You have to, in colleges you can't do that, but you can have a referral network that could evaluate a child's being afraid of being, if they're being left out of a social group at school, that could transfer to being bullied or not valued by an audience. Things in mental life can be like an F sharp can be a G flat. They can and they can be transposed, and they can be played in different keys. So people turn things around in mental life that get to represent things that they internalize. They kind of swallow it back. It kind of evolves through their life experiences, but then they take it in and they internalize it and make that who I am, and that means I'm not good enough. Or one person I remember seeing was so angry, and she was afraid her anger would be exposed in public, and so she had to punish herself first because she was so guilty about that. And there are things like that that I think can be taught without going into therapy. But I think if therapy is going to be helpful at any age, I've seen people I don't really work with young people, young people. I some high school, college, and then on through late 80s, who wanted to come back, an 80-year-old person plus wanted to come back and revisit some things in life that he felt he had missed and make some peace with the internal self. You can take that kind of peace anywhere. And it comes over time. It's not quick, as you see, and I think we could talk about forever. And it really depends on the individual, what they bring in, but to internalize and make them feel good about what they are afraid of will be done to them, or they will hurt someone else, like Lucia would act it out, to contain those things and really get involved with doing what they love to do and what they deserve to do and what they can do, and that they're not perfect, and that that you have to come to terms, with not being perfect. But that doesn't mean you can't do it, and that doesn't mean that everybody should do it. There are options in music. That's one of the things I wanted to mention, is to make an option. At Juilliard, this was a long time ago.
Right.
They don't do this now at all, because not at all. But if you weren't a concert pianist at the highest level, you had to teach, God forbid. And Juilliard, you don't do that anymore. I know you don't, because I have contact with you. And you want the artist to be a citizen. And you can be a citizen in many ways. You don't have to be the president of the United States to be a citizen and be active and to promote the value of music, not the perfection of the performer. There's something bigger than you are when you're making music. But that's the work I love doing with people, because we find that value. It is just like a flower blooming. It's like you just see it unfolding, and it gives you an inner freedom. And I don't know if that's really answering your question.
Well, no,
it's a bit esoteric, but you can't see it, you can't feel it, but you know it. You just know it when someone is able to take something that they believe that they've been tortured by.
It's been fascinating to hear your personal journey, from this idea of musician to psychoanalyst. It's really fascinating. And it's interesting to hear too about how, the initial people that you worked with in psychology weren't really necessarily thinking about musicians.
No.
And it's interesting today because there are a lot of people working and talking about performance psychology and
And there's a lot of value in some of it, and the way it's taught. What I find difficult is that you can't cross a line into therapy, and a teacher should not feel like a failure if they want to recommend somebody to therapy, and not feel like they've failed in some way. But on the other hand, and I've had students, some know not the kind of background that we've been talking about, that I've been in music seriously, and I'll tell them what to do. And they get really disappointed when they find out, we're going to find out what you want to do, not what I want to tell you to do. And other people want me to tell them what to do. And we have to find out, why don't you want to, be who you are? There's only one me and there's only one you. Let's be you. It's fascinating work. But I think, if I hear somebody talk about something that they've been working on in a passage that I've played, I'm not going to tell them what to do. And I think a teacher has to not overstep.
Right.
It's really sensitive stuff. And you have to be able to follow up and follow through and have a sense of it, and a big sense of it.
Yeah, well,
it's kind of next conversation.
Maybe. Yeah, maybe. And I think I draw back to what you were saying too about how some of your initial work as a piano teacher is part of what led you on the journey. Because I think as a piano teacher myself, we have to nurture that,
of course,
that relationship and that fragile person, that we're working with.
And I think a lot of piano teachers, I'll say piano, but all teachers have that intuitive sense of what to do. I think I kind of did, but I didn't know it, as opposed to somebody who is do it my way. Or something, or the student will feel bad and they're letting the teacher down. I mean, you all get all kinds of feelings projected onto you. Even when you say the most genuine, kind thing, it can be misinterpreted. When my teacher said, I have faith in you, you're going to be fine.
Yeah.
Oh, Lord, I can't let him down.
You can't let him down.
But you don't know that. But if you can follow up on that, or talk to somebody, or have a therapist come and just talk to studio classes, and answer questions, because there is a stigma about there's something wrong with me, and I can't. And the teachers feel that too, and you can't be everything to everybody.
No,
that's why we all have each other, and that's why I think the interdisciplinary work, with people who, can talk to people about business, can talk to people about feelings, and can do it in an age-appropriate way, and be ready to, if you can, to catch if somebody is taking it the wrong way.
Right.
Or to ask somebody, a friend or a colleague or a professional, or to have somebody come in. And the other piece, if you deal with younger students, is their parents.
Yeah.
The parents, because everybody in that audience is a parent. Nobody should have to worry about losing a parent, because of how you play an instrument.
Yeah. Well, I'm afraid we probably have time for one more question, but it's an important one. So how does piano continue to inspire you today?
That's the hardest question you've asked me, because it's so it's so generic to who I am. It's not just piano, it's music.
It's music, yeah.
I'm not playing the piano now, although there's a little inkling of maybe, but I'm so out of shape, and I love what I do. Takes up so much time with the writing and seeing patients and committees and organization. What is playing? Even your question is boggling my mind.
What is inspiring to you about it can even be about the work that you do with musicians and pianists. Yeah.
Music makes me feel special. It reaches, and this is what I got out of Melodies of the Mind, the first book, that music can go to places in my mind, in my whole soul. I mean, psyche means soul. It doesn't mean mind. You're a musician. It's who you are. It's not only what you do. I can listen to music. I do when I take walks. And I have certain things I may want to hear when I take a walk because I'm in a certain mood. I love Kermit the Frog singing. It's Not Easy Being Green. I
Yeah.
love him singing The Rainbow. There's a great thing on YouTube with Choir. I don't know if you know
No,
that.
I don't.
Oh my goodness, I love. But I love the Rachmaninoff Third Piano Concerto. I think it's my desert island piece. I love, I don't know, I just have a whole bunch of things, and I take walks and I listen, sometimes at random and sometimes I choose. But it can affect me in a way that nothing else can, even words. It bypasses words. It's more in my soul. And so how it affects me and what does it mean to me? It means everything to me. I think of I don't know where I would be if I didn't have that music. I think that was the thing that really saved me as a child. And then here I am.
Back to the white piano.
Back to the white piano.
Yeah.
It music and emotions, it goes where words can't. And as a therapist, when we can get to the emotions, I think we can really get to the heart of the person. And music gets to my heart. And that's the simplest and most complex thing, I guess I could say. It gets to my heart.
Well, Julie, it's been a pleasure to interview you today and learn about your very fascinating life and experience.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's been a pleasure, and your questions really took me down memory lane.
Good. Very good.
But it's a memory lane that's changed over the years. So thank you so much for inviting me.
Of course.
Pleasure.
The Francis Clark Center is a not-for-profit educational organization that serves the advancement of piano teaching, learning, and performing. Divisions include Piano Magazine, Piano Inspires Kids, Journal for Piano Research, National Conference on Keyboard Pedagogy, the New School for Music Study, Piano Education Press, International Online Teacher Education, and Piano Inspires Online Community Hub. Please visit us at pianoinspires.com to learn more about our impactful work and inspiring community.